Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Arlington's Memorial Day ceremony. I'm Jeff Chunglo, Director of Veteran Services here in Arlington. Military members not in the official party will remain uncovered throughout the ceremony today. Would you please rise for the arrival of our official party? Mr. Adam Chapdelaine, Town Manager. Mr. Joseph Curo, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. State Representative Sean Garbley. And Rear Admiral Louis C. Tripoli, Deputy Commander, Navy Medicine East. Members of the Arlington Police Department and Arlington Fire Department will now present the colors. Parade the colors.
Dale, lock time, lock.
Mr. John Flood will now sing our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Host the colors. Would you please bow your head for our invocation? Lord our God, we give thanks to you for this great land of your birth with all of its liberties and blessings. Today we give thanks to those who served our country. We gather today to honor our fallen warriors who gave their very lives to secure our freedom. Watch over their families that they might find peace and comfort. Watch over your brave men and women of our armed forces serving in harm's way today. Grant your continued care over all of us gathered here today to pay respect to our fallen veterans. In your name we pray. Amen. Please be seated. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Board of Selectmen, Joe and Joan Connors, present this morning representing our Gold Star parents, the members of our Arlington Veterans Council, the members of our local military service organizations, and all veterans in attendance today. I'd like to extend a special warm welcome to Admiral Tripoli's wife, Michelle, and son, Phil. Thank you for attending our ceremony today. I'd like to thank the talented members of the Arlington High School for providing our music this morning. They were great. And a thank you to the members of the Arlington Police and Fire Department Honor Guards, our Army Ceremonial Flag Detail, and to Mr. John Flood for that great rendition of our national anthem. Thank you, John. Our World War I veterans. This year marks the 100th anniversary of the start of World War I, when the United States declared war on Germany on April 6, 1917. Over 189,000 men and women served in the armed forces during World War I. Massachusetts paid a steep price with the loss of over 5,700 men and women who died in combat. Sadly, there are no World War I veterans among us today. Our World War II veterans. During World War II, 7,245 Arlington residents served in the military. Honoring all World War II veterans today, we pay special tribute to a Massachusetts native. Today marks the 100th birthday of Navy Lieutenant and former Commander-in-Chief, President John F. Kennedy, born today, May 29th, in 1917. He joined the United States Naval Reserve and served from September 24th, 1941 until March 1st, 1945. Lieutenant Kennedy was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal, the Navy's highest non-combat decoration for heroism, for his actions on August 1st and 2nd, 1943. And additionally, he was awarded the Purple Heart Medal. Following his military service, he went on to serve the U.S. House of Representatives from 1947 to 1953. He then served in the United States Senate from 1953 to 1960 and was elected our 35th President of the United States, serving from 1961 to 1963. President Kennedy was responsible for rebuilding the Special Forces, reinstating the Green Berets. Another enduring legacy of his administration was the creation of another Special Forces command, the U.S. Navy SEALs. Regarding military service, President Kennedy is quoted as saying, "Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty." The Korean War. The Korean War is commonly referred to as a forgotten war. During this conflict, 2,077 Arlington residents served in the military. This year, we honor the family of a fallen Korean War veteran. Today, we honor Lawrence Albertelli, represented by his wife, Gloria. Lawrence Albertelli entered the U.S. Army on January 8, 1953, and served in Korea for 1 year, 3 months. Upon the completion of his foreign service, he was transferred to the U.S. Army Reserve on December 8, 1954, and he was presented with his honorable discharge from active duty service. Recently, the Republic of Korea authorized U.S. service members that were stationed in Korea during the Korean War to receive the Ambassador of Peace Medal, issued by the Ministry of Veterans and Patriot Affairs. Following the reading of a letter and special proclamation, Rear Admiral Tripoli will present the Ambassador for Peace Medal on behalf of the Republic of Korea Consul General to Mrs. Albertelli. I'm pleased to inform you that the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs of the Republic of Korea presents the Ambassador for Peace Medal in honor of your brave service and sacrifice during the Korean War. The people of the Republic of Korea will always remember you as a hero who took on a call to defend a country that you never knew and the people that you never met. On behalf of the government of the Republic of Korea, I warmly congratulate you and your family for receiving this honorable medal today. The official proclamation. It is a great honor and pleasure to express the everlasting gratitude of the Republic of Korea for our people for their service you and your countrymen have performed in restoring and preserving our freedom and democracy. We cherish in our hearts the memory of your boundless sacrifices in helping us reestablish our free nation. In grateful recognition of your dedicated contributions, it is our privilege to proclaim you as an ambassador for peace. With every good wish of the people of the Republic of Korea, let each of us reaffirm our mutual respect and friendship that may endure for generations to come. Signed by the Minister, Patriot and Veterans Affairs, and the Chairman of the Korean Veterans Association. Our Vietnam veterans. During the Vietnam War, 2,297 Arlington residents served their country. Representing our Vietnam veterans, Jonathan B. Talcott served in the U.S. Army from 1963 to 1966. During this time, he was stationed in Vietnam and served as an aeronautics technician. His primary duty involved the service and maintenance of electronic and avionic equipment for various aircraft. In addition to these duties, he participated in regular patrol duties. Mr. Talcott is a lifelong resident of Arlington, but unfortunately today he is unable to be with us due to ongoing service-connected medical issues. The global war on terrorism. Since 9/11/2001, 374 Arlington residents have served in ongoing military operations throughout the global war on terrorism era. Over 15 designated military operations have been conducted. Representing these military veterans is Chief Petty Officer Jeffrey Melton. Chief Petty Officer Melton was born and raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and enlisted in the U.S. Navy on May 2, 2000, as an electronics technician. Following his initial training, he served aboard the mine countermeasure ship, the USS Dextros, from 2002 to 2004. He then served aboard the USNS Sioux, stationed in San Diego, California. And while in San Diego, California, he met his wife, Lauren. He finished his active duty service at the Center for Surface Combat Training as an instructor in 2009. Following his active duty, he joined the Navy Reserve, serving with Mobile Expeditionary Security Detachment Unit 512 before relocating to Massachusetts the following year. He then affiliated with Mobile Tactical Operations Center Manchester Detachment, and he was promoted to the rank of Chief Petty Officer in September 2013. His military awards include the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, 3 awards, the Combat Action Ribbon, the Iraq Campaign Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary and Campaign Medals, as well as other unit and personal awards. Chief Melton, his wife Lauren, and their two sons, Jacob and William, moved to Arlington in 2013. Jeff is currently a math teacher at the Audison Middle School and is an active member of the Arlington Veterans Council. Jeff is preparing for an upcoming active duty deployment and will be serving as a senior enlisted leader. So Jeff, wish you all the best in your upcoming deployment for you and your family. Would you please join me in thanking all of our veterans today for their service? At this time, I'd like to invite our town manager, Adam Chapdelaine, to offer his remarks.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. It's both an honor and a privilege for me to be here with all of you today as we recognize and remember all of the brave men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our great nation. In recognition of both Memorial Day and, as Jeff mentioned, also this year being the centennial celebration of our 35th President, John F. Kennedy, I'd like to read an excerpt from the proclamation that President Kennedy issued for Memorial Day in 1961. It was proclamation number 3409, entitled Prayer for Peace, Memorial Day, 1961. And it began saying, "Whereas the high courage and the supreme sacrifice of Americans who gave their lives in battle have made it possible for our land to flourish under freedom and justice. And whereas the ideals and patriotism of those who answered the call to service stand as an inspiration to every new generation of Americans. And whereas the same principles and revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought and died are still at issue in the world, and the challenge against them can be met only through the same qualities of courage, strength, and unflinching determination shown by our noble dead. And whereas Memorial Day each year provides a fitting occasion upon which our people may not only commemorate the nation's heroic dead, but also unite in prayer for the preservation of liberty and peace, free from the threat of war." These words, penned over 50 years ago, are as true and as meaningful today as they were then. So I'd like to thank Jeff for his exemplary efforts in organizing this event and his efforts throughout the year, and thank all of you for being here today as we remember. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite our Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Joseph Kiro, to offer his remarks.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today in honoring our fallen veterans. I speak on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, myself, Vice Chairman Stephen Byrne, Kevin Greeley, Diane Mahan, and Dan Dunn. And in doing so, I extend our appreciation to all of our community members who have joined this morning in this solemn observance. I offer special gratitude to our outstanding Director of Veterans Services, Jeff Chunglo, the members of our Veterans Council, and all of the many staff members and volunteers for your efforts to place flags on the graves of our deceased vets and to ensure that we mark this day appropriately. If I'm not mistaken, that was over 4,000 flags that were placed. Is that correct? It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot. I'd like to particularly welcome Rear Admiral Tripoli to the town of Arlington, a recently designated Purple Heart community. Our name was adopted in 1867 to honor those who fell in the Civil War and lie interred in Arlington National Cemetery. And our local Civil War dead are remembered prominently by the monument at the corner of Broadway and Massachusetts Avenue. Massachusetts Avenue itself is part of the Battle Road Scenic Byway and Arlington's honorary Purple Heart Avenue. Very close to where we gather, the American veteran was born in the opening struggles of the Revolutionary War, and our first American war dead found their eternal resting place in our nearby old burying ground. In our town, we strive to honor all of our veterans every day of the year, culminating in our observance on November 11th. We set aside today to specifically honor the memory of all who gave the full measure of devotion to our country. Since we came together last year, the roles of the deceased have had 33 active duty members added to them. We honor them, the thousands who died before them, and the countless others who succumbed at home to grave injuries of body, mind, or spirit incurred in the course of their service abroad. The duty to remember the fallen is very personal to me. I come from a family of veterans. I was born in a naval hospital near Parris Island, where my father served as a dental officer during the Vietnam conflict. My dad treated thousands of young Marines from all over the country, some from backgrounds of privilege and others who had previously enjoyed scant access to medical or dental care. Large numbers of these young men went overseas to Southeast Asia, and many never returned. My elementary school was named for a hometown hero, Second Lieutenant Ralph Talbot, the first Marine Corps aviator to receive the Medal of Honor. Lieutenant Talbot died just 2.5 weeks before the end of World War I. My high school football captain and classmate, Jeff Mullen, was the next to last American casualty in Operation Desert Shield. Having lived nearly all of my adult years here in Arlington, I've come to know similar stories of heroism and grief. 6 years ago, many of us joined together in silent salute behind the high school when the moving wall gave us a unique opportunity to honor our Vietnam War dead, including 10 men with Arlington roots, among them Arlington's own Medal of Honor recipient, Captain Joseph Grant. This past August, Arlington helped to honor the memory of U.S. Army Corporal Ronald Sparks, a former Korean War POW, whose remains were finally identified and returned to his family after decades of waiting and wondering. And we are joined this year and every year by Joe and Joan Connors, remembering their son John, an elite Navy SEAL and one of the first to volunteer for our 1989 mission in Panama. And if you don't know John's story, I encourage you all to Google Measure of a Man, Navy Frogmen. The Connors and our other Gold Star families are due our greatest debt of gratitude and respect. It is customary at Navy funerals to play the Navy hymn. This is based on an older hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save, one version of which ends with the following words: O Trinity of love and power, our people's shield in danger's hour, from rock and tempest, fire and foe, protect them wheresoe'er they go, thus evermore shall rise to thee, glad praise from space, air, land, and sea. As we walk today amongst the monuments and memorials at Mount Pleasant Cemetery, let us meditate on the record of sacrifice that is chiseled into the cold stone markers, and let us never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. At this time, I'd like to introduce our State Representative, Sean Garbely, to offer his remarks.
Good morning. It is a privilege to be with all of you this morning. Jeff Chunglo, thank you so much for putting this amazing event together, along with our incredibly hardworking Veterans Council and our public employees who made this day, this event, and allowing us to remember and to reflect and to pay tribute. We all know that throughout the year, it is critical and essential to pay tribute to our veterans. That is something none of us should take lightly. One of the roles or the issues that I care about so much is what happens, or what kind of a commonwealth our veterans return home to. Making sure that after our veterans fight so hard for our freedoms abroad, that they shouldn't have to fight for everything just to take care of themselves when they come home. That includes housing, that includes a job, that includes access to higher education. We've all heard so many stories of our veterans coming home and facing homelessness, facing poverty, facing the inability to find a job. And throughout the year, that is a mission incumbent upon all of us to make sure that our veterans can receive access to everything that they deserve and fought for. That's something that we should be doing every single day. But today is the very special day of observing those who gave the ultimate sacrifice to this incredible nation. Since 1775, over 1 million men and women paid the ultimate sacrifice to this country. Some born and raised in the town of Arlington. That's important to think about, and it's important to reflect on today and throughout the year because we take that for granted. People in Arlington try not to take it for granted, but when we come together on Memorial Day, it seems to be more of a focus on going to the beach and having barbecues than reflecting on the pain and suffering of not just those who gave their lives for this country, but for their families as well. Put yourself in the shoes of a Vietnam veteran who passed away, who went to Arlington High School. And as their fellow classmates are preparing for a life of immeasurable success and opportunity, they were preparing to go to Vietnam. So as their classmates were getting ready to graduate and going to parties and getting ready, they were going to Southeast Asia. Many of them didn't come home. And that's especially important to reflect upon today. One of the things I like to do is read the stories of our veterans and our brave who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And you can go on Google. I'm sure many of you have. And as many of you may know, when you type something in Google, what you're typing in finishes itself for you. So it's what are you looking for? So I typed in Memorial Day. And the first item that popped up was Memorial Day barbecues, or Memorial Day beaches, or Memorial Day sales. I don't know about you, but this town and our culture deserves to remember our brave men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice in a more profound way than going to the beach or lighting up the grill for barbecues or whatever it may be. Today, we need to reflect and remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, their families, and also the veterans who are here today. You know, we use the expression Happy Memorial Day, but for many of the families across this country, and for even the veterans who are sitting in this hall today, you are reflecting on the men and women that served beside you that didn't come home. And so today, especially today, and every day, we come together to reflect and remember, and how important that is to never forget. Thanks so much.
I had the pleasure of serving with Rear Admiral Tripoli in Landstuhl, Germany. Rear Admiral Louis Tripoli is a native of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and was raised in Washington, Pennsylvania. He received his bachelor's degree at Harvard University and attended medical school at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. And he was commissioned as a Navy officer in 1996. He was mobilized as group surgeon and public health officer for the 4th Civil Affairs Group, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force in 2004, performing duties as a civil affairs and medical officer during combat operations in Fallujah. From 2006 to 2008, he served as Navy Personnel Command at the Navy Personnel Command as Senior Medical Officer, managing aspects of health policy and management for Navy personnel who were wounded, ill, or injured. And from 2008 to 2012, he served as Executive Officer and Senior Medical Executive of the Operational Health Support Unit, Naval Medical Center, San Diego. In 2012, the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery selected him to serve as officer in charge of the Naval Expeditionary Medical Unit, Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, Landstuhl, Germany. From 2012 to 2014, he served as commanding officer, Operational Health Support Unit, Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton, and the first commanding officer of the newly commissioned Expeditionary Medical Facility, Camp Pendleton. From 2014 to 2016, he served as Deputy Chief of Staff for Navy Medicine West, and he was promoted to Rear Admiral October 1st, 2016, assuming the role of Navy Reserve Deputy Commander for Navy Medicine East and Deputy Director for the Medical Corps. His military awards include the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, 4 awards, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal with Eagle, Globe, and Anchor, the Fleet Marine Force Ribbon, as well as other service and personal awards. Dr. Tripoli is board certified in internal medicine. He has held appointments at the University of Pittsburgh, Johns Hopkins University, and St. Louis University Institute for Biosecurity. He is the author of several book chapters and scientific research articles, and he holds 2 U.S. patents for the development of medication safety technology. His complete biography can be found in the program. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Rear Admiral Louis C. Tripoli.
Thank you for that generous introduction, Senior Chief Chunglo. If you weren't completely bored out of your skull by that bio, just wait. I'm going to complete the job here in a minute. Now, thank you all for being here, and those remarks by our leadership here were quite profound and actually stole some of my research too, so that's good. I can skip over those parts. Anyway, thank you again, Senior Chief, and thanks for inviting me. Again, thank you, Adam Chapdelaine. I'm going to destroy your name there for being here. Joe Currow and State Representative Sean Garbely. I got it. All right. Thank you again. And honored guests, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guard, firefighters, policemen, first responders, former and present. It's always an honor to speak to you about the Navy, and it's truly a privilege to recognize our fallen American heroes with you on this Memorial Day. The presence of everyone here today makes this both a solemn moment of reflection and a hopeful and heartfelt occasion, and thank you all for being here. I also particularly wanted to thank you with children for being here. You have great fortitude for having them sit through this, and it shows what great parents you are, and thank you for doing that. It goes to show you that our country really is in good hands and we can expect great things. First, a disclaimer. I have to say this. Any views or opinions I express here are mine and do not reflect official policy of the Department of the Navy. All right? Got it out of the way there. Okay. Well, it's great to be back in Boston. As you heard, I went to school here, and this is my son's first visit. It's amazing how it's changed since I was here. So much has changed. The horse-drawn carriages aren't here anymore. Gas lamps are gone. I got my meat from Uncle Sam. So anyway, I hope to share with you some of the research and some of the stories that I have to bring to you about this day. And I hope that you'll bear with me through some of these as I re-educate you about some of the things that I learned. First of all, Memorial Day is an opportunity to remember the valor and service of the 1.2 million veterans who, while wearing the cloth of our nation, have perished both here and in foreign lands and seas throughout our nation's military history. And as was already pointed out, 3 years after the Civil War ended on May 5th, 1868, the Heaven Organization of Union Veterans, the Grand Army of the Republic, established Decoration Day as a time for the nation to decorate the graves of the war dead with flowers. And we're going to actually see in the cemetery today a monument that is from the Civil War and was dedicated by the Grand Army of the Republic. Major General John A. Logan declared Decoration Day should be observed on May the 30th. That day was chosen because it was believed that flowers would be blooming everywhere in the country. The flowers are certainly in bloom in Massachusetts today, and to punctuate the importance of this day, we've added the rain, symbolic of our tears as we as a nation shed for those we've lost. The first large observance of Memorial Day was held in 1868 at Arlington National Cemetery across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. But it wasn't until World War I, however, that the day was expanded to honor those who have died in all American wars. In 1971, Memorial Day was declared a national holiday by act of Congress, though it's still often called Decoration Day. It was then, of course, as you know, like all federal holidays, placed on the Monday, so that's why it falls on the last Monday in May. In addition to that, a lot of people may not remember this, but in December 2000, Congress passed a law and the President signed it called the National Moment of Remembrance Act, and that encourages all Americans to pause wherever they are at 3 p.m. local time on Memorial Day for a moment of silence to remember and honor those who have fallen. And again, this has already been said, and all right, here goes, I'm going to try it. The town of Menotomy was changed to Arlington in 1867 in honor of the heroes buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. Of course, that, as you all know, is the Indian word for swift running water. I found that out. And as you also know, Arlington was the home of Eugene Francis McGurl, who was born in 1917. He attended Arlington High School and joined the U.S. Army Air Force in World War II. He was one of the 80 airmen who, under the leadership of Jimmy Doolittle, disembarked from the USS Hornet in the first bombing raid over Tokyo in World War II. And I'll have a little bit more to say about him later. But as all of you are probably familiar with the story of the first great American war veteran from Menotomy, Samuel Whittemore, right? I'm surprised nobody brought that one up. Okay, so everybody knows Samuel Whittemore was an American farmer and soldier, and he was old when he became a soldier, you know, so people ask me if I knew him, but no, I didn't. He was 78 when he first became the oldest known colonial combatant in the American Revolutionary War. And on April 19th, 1775, he was an army of one engaging a bunch of British forces. He shot 3 of them before he ran out of bullets, and then they came along and gave him a good beating. They bayoneted him, they shot him in the face, and left him for dead. He was found by colonial forces trying to reload his musket. He was taken to Dr. Cotton Tufts of Medford. Now, this is how good doctors were in those days, okay? They said there was no chance that he would survive. However, he lived another 18 years and died of natural causes in his late 90s. So if nothing else, that man must embody the spirit that I've seen in this town, in this region, since I've gotten here. Never give up. By the way, more Redcoats and Patriots were killed and wounded in Menotomy that day than in all other towns combined. And that's where the action really was on April 19th, 1775. And by the way, if you don't recognize that last line, that was supplied by the Menotomy Minutemen website, and I think they're here today, and thank you very much for being here. So a lot of people ask me what it's like to be a reservist. You know, actually the Navy combined the active duty and reserve in 2005, so we're all We're all called USN now, but some of us are part-time. And I want to just follow on the theme of Minuteman. Like Senior Chief and many of you, I'm a reservist. And like the first Minutemen, we stand by always on the watch. The citizen soldier or sailor forms the backbone of America's fighting strength. And you know all those World War II movies you see on late night TV? Remember these? In Harm's Way, Sands of Iwo Jima, The Longest Day, They Were Expendable, the Green Berets, Flying Leathernecks, the Fighting Seabees. Well, all those characters were played by John Wayne, and most of them were reservists, okay? We're also medical personnel. Senior Chief Chunglo and I, he's what's called a corpsman. And so is our chief here. Isn't Chief a corpsman? Are you? Oh, I'm sorry, he's not a corpsman. I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, Senior Chief. Anyway, we'll make him one sooner or later. We're medical personnel, and we're entrusted with a sacred mission of caring for your sons and daughters when they're in uniform. It's our duty and honor to try to recruit the best medical personnel possible to serve us whenever and wherever the Navy and Marines are needed. I said Marines. We have our Marines here. Many people are unaware of the fact that the Navy supplies all medical personnel to the Marine Corps. One of the men raising the flag at Iwo Jima, for example, was a Navy corpsman, just like Senior Chief Chunglo is. In Army terms, this would be called a medic. As you might know, I actually, as you heard in my bio, did a significant amount of my service with the Marines. And given the name Tripoli, that was also kind of an interesting coincidence. And most of them could even spell that. So it was really great, and it's always been great working with the Marines, and I still consider myself a Marine as well as a sailor. So I wanted to talk a little bit about medical. Well, how are we doing medically in terms of military medicine? Well, during the American Revolution, the Continental Congress authorized one surgeon to serve in each regiment. Few of those surgeons were trained, and there were only 2 medical schools in the United States at that time. By the time of the Civil War, the Army and Navy combined had about 100 physicians, but 30 of them resigned to join the Confederacy. So we were down to about 70. They didn't have any corpsmen or medics, so the regimental band served as litter bearers. And that turned out to be a really good idea because in the First Battle of Manassas on July 21st, 1861, it was, as you may know from history, it was a rout for the Federal forces, and all the soldiers started to flee back to Washington. Ultimately, 2,708 men were killed or wounded, and the medical department simply couldn't handle the load. Regimental surgeons, because they worked for their unit only, were either swamped or idle. The regimental band members and civilian ambulance drivers hired to be the litter bearers fled from the battlefield. So most of the wounded had to walk 27 miles from the battlefield to Washington to reach hospitals in the rear. And those who couldn't walk, of course, were left to their own fate. Well, the Union Army reorganized its medical department in 1862, and they brought in the first medics, actually called litter bearers. The regimental surgeons were responsible for dressing the wounds, and then people were evacuated in ambulances to a division-level field hospital for surgical treatment. And by the end of the war, there was a system of hospital trains, ships, and general hospitals that could treat patients near their hometown. So things were improving, but fatality rates were still high in the 80 to 90% range for gunshot wounds. So, but even so, and a lot of people don't know this, but death from disease was much higher, especially infectious diseases. And I say that because I also have an infectious disease training. So in the Civil War, for every 3 soldiers killed in battle, 5 more actually died of disease. In all the American wars, there have been 651,000 battle deaths, but you've heard before there's been 1.2 million deaths, and most of those other deaths have occurred because of disease or accidents. About 42 million people have served in the military during wartime, so 1/50th of the people serving have died in uniform. Then World War I came along, which we mentioned, with horrific wounds from machine guns, shell fragments, poison gas, and that created terrific strains on medical units. Still, antibiotics weren't invented, and influenza and pneumonia killed more American soldiers than did enemy weapons. In World War II, the medical capability was further expanded with 700 overseas hospitals. They developed a better triage system. By the time you get to Korea, you've heard about MASH units, which were mobile army surgical hospitals. And that actually got you care within 10 miles of the front lines. Helicopters were first started to be used. And then in Vietnam, that MASH concept was expanded with more hospitals. Interestingly enough, though, the mortality rate still was not as good as it is today. It wasn't until modern trauma care came to the battlefield that we have 5 levels of care. Level 1, frontline care. Level 2, forward surgical treatment. Level 3, combat support hospital. Level 4, surgical hospitals outside the combat zone, such as Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, and I'll talk about that in a second. And Level 5, U.S. military hospitals. So in the last 16 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, we've achieved a 97% survival rate for those who reach Level 2 and beyond. And that rate's even more impressive when you take into account that a much higher percentage of casualties arrive alive than in the past. But there's a downside of that. Many have survived with catastrophic injuries that in previous wars they could not have survived with. But now they face a lifetime of challenges. So on this Memorial Day, I think it's appropriate to remember not only the fallen, but the wounded and those who care for them are also our nation's heroes. Many of the patriots we honor today were young adults when they died. And in reality, they gave up 2 lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. And when they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers, grandfathers, wives and mothers and grandmothers. They gave up everything for our country, and it was for us. And all we need to do today, and all we ask of you today, is to remember them. It's therefore fitting that I say a few words about the Medal of Honor winner from Arlington, Captain Joseph Xavier Grant, U.S. Army, and he was awarded posthumously the Medal of Honor for gallantry in Vietnam. He exemplified the same grit and spirit that all of the heroes from Arlington have exemplified, and his memory will never be forgotten here in Arlington. You may also remember that I mentioned Lieutenant Eugene McGurl earlier in this talk, who participated in the Doolittle raid on Tokyo. On June 3rd, 1942, he took part in a flight of 6 B-25s from Dinjan, India, to attack Lashio, Burma, and then proceed over the Himalayas to a base in Kunming, China. The raid on Lashio was successful, and the flight withdrew on course to Kunming at 10,000 feet in a thick overcast. Suddenly, McGurl's and 2 other planes crashed into the side of a mountain. The others barely missed hitting the ground after pulling up sharply. McGurl was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, Purple Heart, and the Chinese Army, Navy, and Air Corps Medal Class A. He was 25 years old when he died. Let us remember him too. As you've already heard, Joe and Joan Connors are here. Their son, John, was a member of the legendary Navy SEALs. I had the pleasure of meeting them last night along with a number of people who are here. John gave his life for our country in combat in Panama. John had a degree in chemical engineering, spoke 4 languages, and he was a tremendous asset to this community and this country. He was awarded the Navy Cross as his award for gallantry and heroism, and it's a great honor and privilege to be able to meet his parents and to speak about him here today, and thank you for letting me say a few words about him. Numerous other men and women have served in the military from Arlington. Although time does not permit me to mention all of them, there's no doubt that their acts do great honor to those of Samuel Whittemore, Joseph Grant, Eugene McGurl, and John Connors. A little bit about the Navy. New England has always been a seafaring region, and Boston, of course, has a rich maritime naval history. Later today, we're going to go over to the USS Constitution, and as you know, she's still an active Navy ship with an active duty crew. More than 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and about 80% of the world's population lives within 60 miles of a coast, and that number is growing. Maritime transport is essential to the world's economy, and over 90% of the world's trade is carried by sea. On any given day, war or peace, there are more than 44,000 United States sailors and about 100 ships and submarines deployed to locations all around the world. The world's oceans give the Navy the power to protect America's interests anywhere at any time. We are America's away game. The Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral John Richardson, promulgated a design for maritime superiority. And in that document, which you can also Google on the internet, he lists 4 main core attributes for the Navy's identity as integrity, accountability, initiative, and toughness. Toughness. I ask all of you to call to mind the thousands of America's finest men and women who left their homes and family and are right now deployed around the world protecting and defending Americans' freedom on our world's oceans, the freedom for which our fallen brothers and sisters in arms gave their lives. A few more stories, if I may. On September 11, 2002, Yeoman 3rd Class Melissa Rose Barnes was at the Pentagon preparing to leave to move back to California. She had worked at the Navy's headquarters for 2 years after holding several assignments. Promoted to Yeoman 3rd Class in June 2000, she held an administrative job in telecommunications at the Pentagon. She began her service as a corpsman at Naval Medical Center, Portsmouth. Her life was taken along with 125 others at the Pentagon on September 11th. She was 27 years old. Navy Captain Laurel Clark, an astronaut and a fellow physician, was one of the most accomplished members of our Navy medical community. She gave her life for science along with 6 other crew members when Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart during re-entry in the skies over Texas on February 1st, 2003. Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Julian Woods, age 22, of Jacksonville, Florida, died on November 10th, 2004 as a result of hostile fire in Fallujah. He was a star football player at Ed White High School in Jacksonville. He joined the Navy after graduation in 2000. His mother said, "They took my child, but I'm proud. I gave him my blessing when he joined. He died for his country and for other people." Incidentally, I was there in that battle with 3rd Class Petty Officer Julian Woods in 2004. Jennifer Harris was a drum major and flutist with the Swampscott High Band. She worked in the Swampscott Recreation Commission sailing program and worked at the Swampscott Public Library. She volunteered at Salem Hospital. She graduated from Swampscott High School in 1996 and entered the Naval Academy, choosing to become a pilot in the U.S. Marines. On February 7, 2007, she died when the helicopter she was piloting northwest of Baghdad crashed, killing everyone on board. She was 28, and it was her 3rd tour, and she was scheduled to return home the next week. In a statement, her family said, "Jennifer Harris exemplified the best of what this country has to offer." And there are more and more and more stories that I could tell you, some whom I knew personally, some who I did not. These inspiring sailors and Marines are just a few of the thousands that make up America's Navy and support our global mission, a mission that protects our vital interests across the country. The United States Navy sailors and Marines are there right now standing the watch. They'll be there when we're sleeping tonight. They'll be there every Saturday, Sunday, and holiday this year. They're there around the clock, far from our shores, defending America at all times. That they are critically important is there because in every global endeavor, being there matters. I also wanted to say that although I've said a lot about the Navy and the Marines, that's what I know. I know that my fellow soldiers and airmen who serve in the Army and the Air Force are equally as deserving of these comments, and I just wanted to extend all of my very best to them, as well as our first responders who are here today. Okay, just one more story to go, but before I tell you that, I want to say a few words about Landstuhl, Germany. Landstuhl is a small town in Germany in the picturesque region in southwest Germany known as Rhineland-Pfalz, or Rhineland-Palatine. There's an army hospital there. It was initially a German facility, but passed into American hands at the end of World War II. And it was known as the Second General Hospital, or Landstuhl Army Hospital, but by 1997, it had grown to be the U.S. military's only medical center in Europe and became known as the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. And in the year 2000, the Navy started sending medical personnel to Landstuhl, and the mission of the Navy Expeditionary Medical Unit lasted there 14 years. And as previously mentioned, I was the officer in charge of Navy Expeditionary Medical Unit 13, and Senior Chief Chung Lo was over our most important section, the DWMIC, the Deployed Warrior Medical Management Center. And as you've heard, I ended up there because in 2004 I went to Iraq as a member of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force and served in the Battle of Fallujah, and I was in the town and participated in combat, saw many casualties on both sides. After returning home, the Navy wanted me to do a few more things, and as already mentioned in my bio, and the last one of those jobs was to lead this group of sailors to Landstuhl. That's the location of the main receiving hospital for casualties from Iraq and Afghanistan, and we took care of a lot of casualties there. While I was there, I had the chance to visit the American Cemetery at Belleau Wood. And if you ever get a chance to go to Europe and visit these American cemeteries, they're amazingly impressive. There are thousands of Americans buried there on foreign soil, and they're very carefully kept up. In that battle, by the way, the Marines earned the moniker of Teufelhunde from the Germans, meaning devil dogs, because they were indestructible, and that was an emblematic Marine Corps battle. By the way, I should also mention that my grandfather, also named Louis, was at the Battle of Meuse-Argonne in 1918, and that battle was it still ranks, and I hope will always hold the record of the largest number of American casualties of any battle in history. And so, as you all know, of course, that war ended in 1918. Luckily, my grandfather was able to come home, or else the story would have been different, and you might have been listening to a more enlightening speaker today. So occasionally at Landstuhl, we would get a soldier who, despite the best efforts of the staff, was too badly wounded to survive. He would end up being one of those unfortunate 3% that we couldn't save. When that happened, the military arranged for the family of the dying soldier to fly out to Germany and be with their loved one. It was a Sunday, and I went to greet the parents of a young man who was not expected to live. The soldier's mother had a medical problem of her own, and being a physician, I was asked to help her, and I did. And at the end of my discussion with her, we're waiting for someone to get us a prescription from the pharmacy. So it's just the three of us sitting in the room, the mom, the dad, and myself. And it was kind of an awkward silence, so I thought I'd say a few things, and it turned out they seemed a little more at ease than I was. And so despite the fact that their son was in the intensive care unit just a few feet away, not going to live another day, I told them about my son and asked whether they had any other children. And it was then that the dad, calm and reserved, told me about his other son, that he had died in combat the previous year. The boy who was about to die was his brother. At that time, I always have a trouble telling this story, but anyway, because, as you know, it was it definitely struck me. But at that time, of course, I didn't know what to say. But the mom, clear-eyed and composed, said it was okay, no regrets. They were proud of their boys. They just hoped that they would be remembered for doing their duty. And so, in closing, let me say that a key component of our nation's greatness lies in our desire to remember and honor the countless men and women who have died while serving in the military, bonded by the call of freedom to defend the very ideals upon which this nation was built. As we stand here today, I ask you to call to mind all who have perished, as well as those missing in action, the wounded, and all those who have served on behalf of our great nation. The sacrifices made by America's military can never be truly measured, but they can be appreciated. Their histories can be retold, and their memories can be kept alive. Our presence here today signifies your commitment to the importance of remembering. Every one of you is here because you want to remember. You took the time to come and render your own form of personal honor to our heroes, and for that, I thank you. God bless you all, and God bless America.
As part of every military funeral, the casket is draped by the American flag. The flag is then ceremoniously folded, a rifle volley is rendered, taps is played, and the tri-cornered folded flag is presented to the family. Ceremonial flag detail, front and center. For military funerals, where there are remains, the flag is folded. At the cemetery, it is ceremoniously unfolded and refolded for the family. As part of a flag folding ceremony, the flag is folded 13 times. Each fold represents or symbolizes an aspect of life, religion, or country. These representations have been part of our military tradition dating back to the Revolutionary War era. The first fold represents a symbol of life. The second fold represents our belief in eternal life. The third fold represents honor and remembrance of our veterans departing our ranks. The fourth fold represents a turn to God in wartime and in peace. The fifth flag, a fold, represents a tribute to our country. The sixth fold represents devotion felt in our hearts, pledging allegiance to the flag. The seventh fold represents a tribute to our armed forces. The eighth fold represents a tribute to the soldier and his mother. The ninth fold represents a tribute to womanhood, recognizing traits of faith, love, loyalty, and devotion. The 10th fold represents a tribute to fathers. The 11th fold glorifies the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold represents the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. The 13th fold, represented by the Canton Field of Blue with white stars, reminds us of our nation's motto, "In God We Trust." In a letter penned by President Abraham Lincoln on November 21st, 1864, his comments summarized the sacrifices of our veterans and surviving family members. He wrote, "Dear Madam, I've been shown in the files of the War Department a statement of the Adjutant General of Massachusetts that you are the mother of 5 sons who have died gloriously on the field of battle. I feel how weak and fruitless must be any word of mine which should attempt to beguile you from the grief of a loss so overwhelming. But I cannot refrain from tendering you the consolation that may be found in the thanks of the Republic they died to save. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage you the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only with the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid such a costly sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Yours very sincerely and respectfully, A. Lincoln. Those beautiful words describe not only the incredible price that service members have paid for our freedom throughout the years, but also the gratitude that we owe their families to make sure their sacrifice was not in vain. We, the people, are charged with making sure that freedom will not be lost in this great nation. As we pay tribute to our fallen heroes, let us engage and educate our family, friends, and neighbors not present today. Share the true meaning of Memorial Day and the sacrifices made by our loved ones. Keep their memory alive and honor their service to our nation. Would you please stand and join me in a moment of silence? Please bow your head for our benediction. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for his friends. This is the reason we are here today, to pay tribute, respect, remembrance, and honor to the gallant men and women of our armed forces who obtained God's glory by laying down their lives for us. May God bless their souls and protect the men and women who now stand in harm's way. May God bless his country and his love. May God forever hold us in his holy embrace and grant us peace for God, family, and country. Amen. Please be seated. This concludes our ceremony. I'd like to thank all of our speakers for your comments today, adding special meaning to the day. For those of you that would like to proceed to Mount Pleasant Cemetery for our wreath-laying ceremonies, we will gather in front of the town hall and proceed to the cemetery. For those of you that do not wish to walk to the cemetery, you can board the vehicles waiting outside the town hall. The police department and the cemetery have asked that we limit the number of vehicles entering the cemetery, so I ask that you board the buses outside. Following the wreath-laying ceremonies, they will return everyone to the town hall. And please remain seated until the official party has departed. Thank you. Over 15 designated military operations have been conducted since September 11, 2001. Approximately 2.5 million members of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and related Reserve and National Guard units have been deployed since 9/11. Over 7,000 military personnel have been killed, and over 50,600 military personnel have been wounded. Chief Petty Officer Jeff Melton will present a wreath in honor of our fallen Global War on Terrorism veterans. The Anatomy Minutemen will render honor. Ceremonial volley. Firefighter Brian Sweeney will perform Amazing Grace. The patriots who are laid to rest in Arlington were fighting for many things. For their families, for their flag, but above all, they were fighting for us. Let us never forget the ultimate sacrifice these brave men and women have paid. Let us remember the Gold Star families who have lost loved ones to illness, injury, and combat. Those who stood strong through uncertainty and whose resilience, dedication, and commitment to their loved ones continue to shine and serve as support for others during their darkest hours. Let us not forget the men and women currently conducting military operations around the globe and the Blue Star families awaiting their safe return. I ask you to remember and honor the missing as well. Our nation remains committed to the efforts to locate, identify, and repatriate those men and women who have not returned home. Sir, any comments?
Just wanted to say in closing, thank you all for being here today. You have an amazing community and one that you should be very proud of. We'll never forget this visit, I'm sure. I want you all to just, again, thank you, and thanks for all you're doing for our country. God bless you, and God bless America.
In closing, I'd like to thank Rear Admiral Tripoli for his participation in and Michelle and Phil for attending our ceremony today. I'd like to acknowledge all of our veterans present today, our elected officials, the Arlington Police Department, the Arlington Fire Department, the Public Works Department, and the staff here at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. I'd also like to thank the volunteers that participated in placing all of the flags on our graves this year at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Everyone's efforts have contributed to a special event today. Most importantly, I'd like to thank all the residents of Arlington for your continued support. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes.